Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, in today's episode, we are going to take a quick look at Crypts of Obscurum. Crypts of Obscurum is a game book, and it is written by Daniel Cortez. And I purchased this physical edition from DriveThruRPG, and you can also get the PDF at DriveThruRPG. So Crypts of Obscurum, I'd say it's kind of a mix between something like an old fighting fantasy book, maybe with something like Escape the Dark Castle, maybe a little bit of something like D100 Dungeon, although you're not going to be drawing your map in this game. You will be setting up some playing cards and flipping a playing card over, and each of the playing cards will correspond to a page in the book. And those will be different scenarios that you will have to overcome by reading prompts and making choices and rolling dice. And you can also create a character, and you're trying to get through all 4 levels of a dungeon. A level of a dungeon consists of 9 dungeon rooms and a boss. And the bosses are represented by the ace cards here. And so you take out your 4 aces and you shuffle those up, and then that will determine the final encounter for each floor. And then you try to get through all 4 bosses in order to win the game. And the game has some really interesting mechanisms. I think it has some pretty good writing as well. I've been really happy with the flavor text, and just the overall kind of dark, grimy theme of this game is super cool. And I do like quite a bit of it. We will do a couple examples. We'll do a couple example turns with a couple of rooms. I'm about halfway through floor number 1 on this character. I don't want to give away too much though, because a lot of the enjoyment in this game is that first discovery. And I think this is one of those games where your very first game is probably going to be your best game, the most exciting game. There are enough prompts, there are enough choices to make for some replay, but that first adventure, that first time you discover each room, will probably be the most exciting. So I don't want to give too much away in this video, but the rules are pretty simple. So when you start the game, you will just read through the rules here, and it'll go through your different attributes. So a character has 4 stats. They have guts, skill, insight, and resolve. Guts is your strength, your overall brawn. Skill is like your dexterity and your agility. Insight is your magic, diplomacy, wisdom, and resolve is your ability to resist damage and bodily afflictions. And so you have your character here. You can create your name. You can pick a class. There are 3 different classes, and each class has 4 different backgrounds. So you can be a Templar, a Cutthroat, or an occultist. And then the Templar, you might be something like a predicant, a Templar predicant, or a Cutthroat Deadeye, or perhaps an occultist oracle. So my character here is Cragor, and he is a Templar predicant. So this is mainly a solo game, but you can also play with up to 3 players. And the way that it balances is through the distribution of hit points and sanity points. So when you're playing one character, you start with 40 hit points and 15 sanity points. And if you're playing with more than one character, you will divvy those up as evenly as possible. I think there is a distribution here. Depending on how many players you're playing, you will divide those up. And so that's kind of how the game balances. I don't know if I would recommend this game with more than one. It really does feel like a solo game. But as far as your stats go, I think this is really cool. I think this is one mechanism that I really do like. You will have 4 different dice. You will have a D12, a D4, a D6, and a D8. And you will assign each one of those dice to one of your stats. So my character is more of a physical character, so I have a D12 assigned to my guts. And because of my background, I also get a +1 to all of my guts rolls. I have a D8 assigned to my insight. I have a D6 assigned to my skill, and right now I am wearing plate armor, which gives me 2 points of armor, but I also have to do a -1 to all of my skill rolls because the armor is heavy. And then I have a D4 to my resolve, but I also, because of my background, I get a +1 to all of my resolve rolls. I do have a passive ability, which is selfless, and each one of those backgrounds will have different abilities. And so because I am a Templar predicant, my selfless ability, if an enemy would target an ally, they will target you instead, so I can take the damage. And I have a unique action of Caretaker's Grace, which I can heal myself or one target by 1d4, and I can do those special abilities in combat. And so each of the different backgrounds will have their own special abilities. I also have a couple of weapons, and the weapons are pretty interesting because they do use some keywords, and I like that. So I am armed with a flamberge, a flanged blade, and a force conduit. And the flanged blade, my flamberge, is a melee. It's a sword. It uses my guts stat to attack. So anytime I use my flamberge, I will roll a d12, and it does 1d6 physical damage. And it also has the special ability of rending. And all of the weapon abilities are listed here. And so rending, if I roll a critical attack, and a critical attack is if you ever roll the highest number on your die, then I can do the maximum damage possible. I am also armed with a force conduit, which is an insight weapon. And the force conduit is a ranged weapon, and it uses my insight die, so that will be a d8. It does 1d6 physical damage, and it is cryptic. If I roll a critical attack with my force conduit, then the target becomes disoriented for 4 points of disorientation. So that's kind of another status effect that you can apply onto your targets. All three of the character classes have access to the crypts, to the spell book, and the spell book is called the Tome of Obscurum. And so you have a number of different spells. We have Flesh Warp, Penumbra, Black Shard, Putrid Needles, Dark Fire, Grasps of the Void, Cruel Inversion, Blood Lightning, Accursed Blade, Otherworldly Aura, Vile Cleansing, and Whispers of the Damned. And in order to cast one of those spells, you just have to pick the spell you want to cast in combat. You lose 1 point of sanity, and then you will make an insight test. And if you pass the test, then you get to cast that spell. And all of the spells have different things that trigger different abilities. Now, in this dungeon here, I found a magical tome, and it allowed me to pick one of these offensive spells and add +1 damage to it. So anytime I cast Blood Lightning, I get to add 1 point of damage. So that's pretty cool as well. And when you cast magic, there is some risk reward. If you ever roll a 1 on your insight test for when you're casting a spell, then you have to roll on this pandemonium table, and bad things can happen to you. The same thing with ranged weapons. Ranged weapons can sometimes give you an advantage, but if you ever roll a 1 on your attack for a ranged attack, you have to roll on your misfire table. At certain points during the game, there will be you will have to make sanity tests. And to make a sanity test, you roll a d20 and you add your current sanity, and then you look up the result on this sanity table. And so if you ever go completely insane, you teleport straight to the final room of the dungeon, and something very bad happens. You can also have an invocation table when you are performing an invoke spell, an invoke action, which that's kind of a healing action or rest action you can take in combat. You will roll a d12 and consult the invocation table. Then there are also a couple tables for loot and treasure, and the loot and treasure will have different items that can help you. You can get different types of different insignias, different talismans. You can get holy symbols and armor and ropes and just things to help you out in the dungeon. There is also a way to generate legendary weapons, and this is pretty cool. You roll a d6, a d6, a d6, and a d20, and at some point you will maybe be able to find a legendary weapon within the dungeon. So let's say we were told to roll up a legendary weapon. We would find a shadow sword that does 1d6 +1 damage. and it is temporal. It has a temporal ability. So that is the of time and yonder. So perhaps we were, so yeah, you could combine those words to come up with kind of a Diablo-esque naming for your legendary weapon, and it would have a couple of keywords assigned to it, and it would be able to do different things. And so for tests in this game, for attribute tests, I think it's a pretty cool little system. Let's say my character here was making a guts test. So my guts is a D12, and I was told to make a guts test against a D6. And so the thing that if I was up against a door and the door had a D6, I would roll both of these, and if my total would meet or beat the total on the test die, then I pass my guts test. So I rolled a 1 there and a 1. Ooh, lucky. Hey, look at that. But I also get a +1, so it would be a 2. So I would barely overcome that challenge. Let's say if I was trying to cast a spell, my insight is a D8, and I was going up against a comparable enemy here who also has a D8 for their insight. So I would roll that. The enemy got a 3, I got a 6, so that way my spell would hit, and then I could apply the damage or apply the effects. So that's basically how tests work in the game, and you will be rolling a lot of different tests. And so when you start off the game, actually, let's take a real quick read here at the back of the book to give us a little bit of theming here. A call from the depths beckons you to the crypts. Inside, you will find horrors unparalleled, evil unmatched, and treasures unimagined. Enter alone or with 2 companions if you dare. Okay, so let's read the little bit of flavor text here at the beginning of the game, and then we'll play a couple sample turns. This bleak and formless landscape, stippled with dead spires and crumbling steeples, serves not as home, but an unforgiving cradle. You've traveled far, beyond the sand-polished obelisks in the red wastes, the hurdles of the nameless mounts, and the strand walkers who guard the night-bound haze. With singular purpose, you trudge in time with the fading heartbeat of the world. Each step downward into the crypts is muted by your ponderings. While sculpting the earth, our creator must have uncovered beauty elsewhere, kept it hidden, nurtured it in solitude, for it is not here. The looming door before you beckons you to enter. Its intricate carvings swirl like flames in a winter sky. Near the base of the door, you see blood smeared across its strong frame. Streaks of gore spell warnings such as turn back and here be death. Though your perseverance casts such weakness aside, you enter. The large door shuts behind you. The stale air greets you malignantly. Small shafts of light enter from above you, slightly illuminating the way forward. Continue onward. Okay, so I'm moving into the next room here, and the next room is a 3 of diamonds. So I will look up the corresponding page here. 3 of diamonds. Okay, 3 of diamonds. Okay, the bone halls. The deep holds many secrets. You descend deeper, finding yourself in what appears to be a hall decorated with countless bones. The bones of millions must have perished to supply decorum for these morbid halls. Each step you take within is amplified by the grotesque crunch of skeletons. Choose one. Okay, so we can continue on our way. We can try not to disturb the bones, step carefully. We can check along the passage, see if there is an alternate route, or we can search the bones for treasure. So I've been trying to kind of role play this as a Templar character who is upholding good. I abhor evil, and I would say that my character, Cragor, does not want to disturb these bones. So I am going to check along the passage to see if there is an alternate route. So go to Scenario C. So I'll read Scenario C. The opposite direction of the hall winds ominously into the void. You follow along, eyes straining to discern in the darkness. Eventually, it opens into a new area. Replace this room with a random room. Okay, so I have not completed that room. I have just found another way into a comparable room. And so we will discard that 3 of diamonds, and I will draw a random card from the top of my deck. And now we have gone into the 5 of hearts. So I basically have just added a room onto this level. So let's go ahead and read the 5 of hearts here. Okay, 5 of hearts. The gnashing jaws of the damned that hunger for living flesh. This room is narrow, constricted by onyx cages on each side. Trapped within them are countless undead, each of their arms reaching and mouths gnashing at the prospect of a living feast. Choose one. Attack the grasping arms, carve a way forward. Attempt to avoid the grasping arms and escape. Command their will. This mindless horde shall kneel. The occult is class only. So there are choices where it depends on it depends on what class you are. I can open the locked cells, setting the creatures free. Well, as a Templar, I want to destroy this evil, so I'm going to attack the grasping arms. A here. So go to scenario A. You swiftly strike at the creatures, their rotting limbs dropping to the cobblestone floor. You make your way past them, but their numbers begin to overwhelm you. Make a guts test against 1d8. Okay, so my guts is a d12 plus 1, and I am up against a d8. So we'll roll both of these, and a 5 versus 9, so I overcome that guts test. On a success, the shambling horde fails to overcome you. Complete this room. So as you can see, there was quite a few things that we didn't discover in that room, so there is some replayability. So I have completed that room, so I will mark this room off towards my progress, and then we will move down to the next room. We'll do one more room here, and that is a 2 of diamonds. Okay, let's turn to our 2 of diamonds here. 2 of diamonds, a welcome sight, a place of bountiful necessity. An abandoned camp sits here alone. Its inhabitants seem to have fled in panic. As you peruse the room, you see many useful items that you can take on your journey. Choose one. Comb through the items. They are better in your hands. Set the cachet ablaze. It belongs to no one now. These items are not needed. You must continue. I'm going to look through the items to see if I can find anything necessary. So make an insight test against 1d10. Okay, so my insight is a d8, and that's going to be up against a d10. So let's see what happens here. 7 and 7, so meet or beat. So I do pass that test there. On a success, go to scenario C. As you rifle through the stockpile of items, you see a small folded parchment containing what appears to be a code, a drawing of a square, a circle, and a triangle. Okay, somebody was playing PlayStation down here, I guess. You pocket the scrawl, adding a curious note to your inventory. All right, so curious note. I will go ahead and jot that down. Hopefully that comes into play later. I like that. And let's see, and then go to scenario A. You thank the previous owners, knowing your journey shall be made easier with more supplies. You and your allies each roll twice on the provisions table. Complete this room. Okay, so we'll mark that room off, and we will now roll twice on the provisions table, which the provisions table here is this first table here. So that will be 2 rolls of a d12. So we'll roll 2d12 and a 1 and a 9. So I have found some rope. And I have found a greater healing flask. Nice. Okay, greater healing flask. Okay, let me see what the rope does here. I haven't seen a rope before. A rope is an item. Spin this item and make a skill test against an enemy. On a success, they skip their next turn. So that kind of helps you bind the enemy. However, my skill is really low. It's a d6 minus 1. So that's probably not going to come in to help here. But this greater healing flask will. Spin this item to heal one character by 1d12. And right now, I have 27 out of 40 hit points. So I think I'm actually going to spend my healing flask right now. I might as well. And go ahead and heal myself for 1d12. And for 6 points of damage. That's going to take me back up to 33. Okay, so now I'm at 33 out of 40. Okay, let's do one more room here. I don't think that's too many spoilers here. So a 10 of hearts. Okay, let's turn to the Ten of Hearts here. Okay, that looks like an interesting entry. Ten of Hearts, the forge, hewn from the finest metals. The distant clangs of metal echo through the halls, leading to this illuminated room. As you enter, you are met with the heat of a forge tended by an enormous man. He swings his hammer down rhythmically, and sparks fly. Ask not why I'm here, Delver. Need ye armor? He says. Choose one. Request something light and nimble. Request armor that provides magical protection. Request a strongest, sturdiest armor he can muster. Present the osseous to him. Ask if he can repair it. Okay, I don't have that. I want something that will help provide some magical protection. Go to scenario B, because I already have some plate armor. I can make ye armor with a strong enchantment. Alls I need from ye is some witch balm, if you have it. If you do not possess witch balm, go to scenario D. I do not. Okay. I must admit, that's a damn shame. I ain't making you anything for free. You best be heading off. He gestures with his forge hammer towards the stairs that wind downward into the abyss. Complete this room. Okay, so we just completed that room, and now we are at the boss. And I will just give you a little preview of the boss here. So I'm at level 1. So my level 1 boss is the Ace of Spades here. And so we could turn to our Ace of Spades to see what our boss is going to be. And that would be Boss, the graceful guardian of the 4th seal. So now I would have to face off against this boss before going on to level 2. And that is basically Crypts of Obscurum. I think you will agree that from what I've read, it's really well written. I like the theme. I think the locations are interesting. There's some cool things. There's some cool choices to be made. I like how some of the choices are limited by what your character class is. I really like this dice system, assigning the dice to your skills and then doing simple tests of die versus die. I like that a lot. I like the way that the weapons work. Combat is pretty interesting. You will often fight against enemies and they will have a combat value, and that combat value dictates the die that you have to beat. So if I was fighting against this Rot Blodkin, they have a combat value of a D4, and if I was striking them with my guts, with my Flamberge, it would be a D12 versus a D4. And that time the D12 completely failed, but if I would have rolled that, then I would have done damage to them. And then when it's their turn, they roll their combat die, and then you apply whatever action that corresponds to. So pretty cool. There's no experience. Sometimes when you kill a creature, you might get some items or you might get a special reward, but you don't need to keep track of gold or XP in this game. One thing I did, I faced off against these like witch ladies, and I got a heliacal dagger. Now I have no idea what that dagger does. It's some kind of key item that hopefully unlocks something later. But yeah, Crypts of Obscurum. This is really fun. I enjoy it. I think if I were to buy it again, I think I would have. I probably should have gotten the PDF version, because maybe there might be some updates that they do to the PDF. I'm not sure. But I will definitely be paying more attention to things by Daniel Cortez, because I think this is a pretty interesting little game book. So, all right, guys. Well, hope you enjoyed this review of Crypts of Obscurum. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.